Stranger warned me that my labubu is evil. Today, I went to a store with my labubu on my bag, and as I was checking out, one of the workers came up to me and said, "Those things are really cute, but if you knew what they stood for, you'll no longer want it," and then followed by telling me it was a demon. The morning had started like any other Saturday. I woke up around 9 in the morning, feeling excited about my weekend plans. I had been looking forward to this shopping trip for weeks. My favorite store was having a huge sale, and I needed to pick up some new clothes for the upcoming season. The weather was perfect for walking around the mall, with bright sunshine streaming through my bedroom window and a gentle breeze that made the curtains dance. I got ready slowly, taking my time to choose the perfect outfit. I wanted to look nice, but also be comfortable for all the walking I would be doing. I picked out my favorite jeans, the ones that fit just right and made me feel confident. I paired them with a soft blue sweater that my grandmother had given me for my birthday last year. It was one of my most treasured pieces of clothing because it reminded me of her warm hugs and the stories she used to tell me. As I was getting ready to leave, I grabbed my trusty canvas bag from the hook by the door. This bag had been with me through so many adventures. It was a simple beige color with sturdy handles that never seemed to break, no matter how much I stuffed into it. But what made this bag special was not the bag itself, but the small companion that lived on it. Attached to the front of my bag was my beloved labubu. I had gotten this little creature just a few months ago, and it had quickly become my favorite accessory. The labubu was about the size of my palm, with soft pink fur that felt like touching a cloud. It had the most adorable face with big, round eyes that seemed to look right into your soul. Its ears were long and pointed, almost like a rabbit, but with a mysterious twist that made it unique. The little arms and legs were perfectly proportioned, and it had a tiny mouth that seemed to be smiling just for me. I had discovered labubu through social media, where pictures of these cute creatures were everywhere. They came in different colors and styles, but I had fallen in love with the classic pink one the moment I saw it. When I finally saved up enough money to buy one, I felt like I was adopting a new friend. I named mine Rosie because of its beautiful pink color, and I took it everywhere with me. The drive to the mall was peaceful and relaxing. I played my favorite music and sang along as I navigated through the familiar streets of my neighborhood. The trees were starting to change colors, showing the first signs of autumn. Orange and yellow leaves danced in the wind, creating a beautiful carpet on the sidewalks. I loved this time of year because everything felt fresh and new, like the world was getting ready for a cozy season ahead. When I arrived at the mall, I was surprised by how busy it was. The parking lot was nearly full, and I had to drive around for several minutes before finding a spot. As I walked toward the entrance, I noticed families with children running around, teenagers hanging out in groups, and couples walking hand in hand. The energy was vibrant and happy, making me feel even more excited about my shopping adventure. The mall was beautifully decorated for the season. There were pumpkins and colorful leaves arranged in artistic displays throughout the corridors. The smell of cinnamon and apple from the nearby bakery filled the air, making my stomach rumble with hunger. I made a mental note to stop by there later for a treat. I spent the next 2 hours browsing through different stores. I found a beautiful scarf that would go perfectly with my winter coat, and I discovered a bookstore that had just opened. I spent a long time looking through their collection, eventually choosing a mystery novel that had gotten great reviews. Throughout my shopping trip, I noticed several people glancing at my labubu with smiles on their faces. Some children pointed at it excitedly, and their parents would smile and nod approvingly. One little girl, who could not have been more than 6 years old, came up to me while I was looking at jewelry in one of the stores. She had curly brown hair and was wearing a bright yellow dress with flowers on it. "I love your little friend," she said, pointing at Rosie with wonder in her eyes. "It looks so soft and cuddly." Her mother, a kind-looking woman with the same curly hair, smiled at me apologetically. "I am sorry, she just loves cute things and could not help herself." "It is perfectly fine," I replied, kneeling down to the little girl's level. "Would you like to touch it? It is very soft." The little girl's eyes lit up like stars, and she gently petted Rosie's fur. "It feels like a teddy bear," she whispered in amazement. "What is its name?" her mother asked, seeming genuinely interested. "This is Rosie," I said proudly. "She goes everywhere with me." The mother and daughter both smiled warmly before continuing with their shopping. These kinds of interactions happened several times throughout the day, and each one made me love my labubu even more. It seemed to bring joy to people wherever we went, and that made me feel happy and proud. As the afternoon wore on, I realized I was getting hungry and decided it was time to head home. My bag was full of new treasures, and I was feeling satisfied with my successful shopping trip. I had found everything I was looking for and even discovered a few things I had not expected to find. The final store I needed to visit was a large department store where I wanted to pick up some basic items like socks and underwear. It was not the most exciting shopping, but it was necessary. The store was busy but well organized, with clear signs pointing to different sections. I made my way through the aisles, checking items off my mental list as I went. The department store was one of those places that felt both familiar and overwhelming at the same time. The fluorescent lights buzzed quietly overhead, casting a bright, clean glow over everything. The floors were polished to a shine, and I could hear the soft sound of my sneakers squeaking slightly as I walked through the aisles. I had been shopping for about 20 minutes when I realized I needed to find the checkout area. My arms were getting tired from carrying all my purchases, and I was ready to head home. I followed the signs toward the front of the store, passing displays of seasonal items and last-minute impulse purchases that stores always put near the registers. The checkout area was moderately busy, with several lanes open and customers moving through at a steady pace. I chose a lane that seemed to be moving quickly and got in line behind an elderly gentleman who was buying what looked like gifts for his grandchildren. He had a cart full of toys and books, and he kept checking a handwritten list to make sure he had not forgotten anything. As I waited in line, I shifted my bag to my other shoulder and noticed that Rosie was positioned perfectly on the front of my bag, visible to anyone who looked in my direction. Her bright pink fur stood out beautifully against the beige canvas, and her little face seemed to be observing everything around us with those big, curious eyes. The elderly gentleman finished his purchase and moved on, and I stepped forward to place my items on the conveyor belt. The cashier was a young woman, probably around my age, with friendly eyes and a warm smile. She had her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and was wearing the store's standard uniform with a name tag that reads Sarah. "Did you find everything you were looking for today?" Sarah asked as she began scanning my items. "Yes, thank you," I replied. "It was a very successful shopping trip." She smiled and continued working efficiently, scanning each item and placing it carefully in bags. I was watching the total add up on the screen and calculating whether I had enough cash or if I would need to use my credit card when I became aware of someone approaching from my left side. I turned to see another store employee walking toward me. This person was different from Sarah, older, maybe in their 40s, with graying hair and a more serious expression. They were wearing the same store uniform, but something about their demeanor seemed more intense than the casual friendliness I had experienced from other employees throughout the day. The worker came right up to me, close enough that I could smell their cologne and see the small details of their face. They had deep-set eyes that seemed to be studying me very carefully, and their mouth was set in a straight line that suggested they had something important to say. "Excuse me," they said, their voice low but clear enough for me to hear over the general noise of the store. "I could not help but notice your little accessory there." I looked down at Rosie, wondering what they meant. "Oh, this. It is my labubu. Her name is Rosie." The worker's expression did not change, but I noticed their eyes narrow slightly. "Those things are really cute, but if you knew what they stood for, you will no longer want it." I felt a strange chill run down my spine. The worker's tone was serious, almost urgent, like they were trying to warn me about something dangerous. I had been expecting them to make a casual comment about how adorable Rosie was, like so many other people had done throughout the day. This was completely different. "I am sorry, what do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused. The worker looked around quickly, as if checking to make sure no one else was listening, then leaned in closer. "It is a demon," they said in a hushed but firm voice. "Those things represent evil spirits. You should not be carrying that around with you." I felt my heart skip a beat. The worker's words hit me like a cold wave, completely unexpected and jarring. I looked down at Rosie, who suddenly seemed different somehow, though nothing about her had actually changed. Her sweet pink fur was still the same, her little face still wore the same innocent expression, but the worker's words had planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Sarah, the cashier, had stopped scanning my items and was looking at her coworker with a mixture of surprise and embarrassment. "Marcus, what are you doing?" she asked quietly. "You cannot just approach customers like that." Marcus apparently was not deterred by Sarah's objection. He kept his focus on me, his expression serious and concerned. "I am just trying to help her understand what she is carrying around," he said. "These things are not innocent toys. They have a dark meaning that most people do not know about." I felt completely overwhelmed and confused. Here I was in the middle of a routine shopping trip, and suddenly I was being told that my beloved labubu was some kind of evil entity. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into a different reality where normal rules did not apply. I have never heard anything like that before, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the confusion I was feeling. I thought it was just a cute character like a stuffed animal or a toy. Marcus shook his head firmly. That is exactly what they want you to think, but if you really research these things, you will find out the truth. The design, the symbolism, even the name, it all points to something much darker than what appears on the surface. Sarah looked increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. She had finished scanning my items, but seemed hesitant to continue with the transaction while this strange conversation was happening. Other customers in nearby lanes were starting to notice the commotion, and I could feel their curious eyes on us. Look, Marcus continued, his voice taking on an almost pleading tone, I'm not trying to scare you or ruin your day, but I have done research on these things, and I felt like I had to say something when I saw you carrying one around. There are videos online, articles, people who have experienced strange things after bringing these into their homes. I felt a mixture of emotions washing over me. Part of me was annoyed that this stranger was interrupting my shopping trip to tell me disturbing things about something I loved, but another part of me was genuinely curious and a little concerned. Could there really be something I did not know about labubu? What kind of strange things? I found myself asking, even though I was not sure I wanted to know the answer. Marcus glanced around again, then spoke in an even lower voice. Nightmares, unexplained noises, feelings of being watched. Some people say their luck changed for the worse after they got one. Others talk about sensing a presence in their homes that was not there before. Sarah finally decided to intervene more directly. Marcus, I think you need to let this customer finish her purchase in peace, she said firmly. This is not appropriate customer service, but I was already too caught up in the conversation to simply walk away. Have you experienced anything like that yourself? I asked Marcus. He nodded gravely. My daughter got one a few months ago. Within a week, she was having nightmares every night. She said she felt like something was watching her sleep. We finally threw the thing away and the nightmares stopped immediately. I stood there for a moment, processing everything Marcus had told me. The busy sounds of the store seemed to fade into the background as I tried to make sense of this unexpected encounter. My hands unconsciously moved to touch Rosie, feeling her soft fur and familiar weight against my bag. She felt exactly the same as she always had, warm, comforting, and completely harmless. Sarah was clearly eager to finish the transaction and move on from this awkward situation. She had bagged all my items and was waiting for me to pay, but I could tell she was also curious about what I would do next. The customers behind me in line were shifting impatiently, and I realized I was holding up the entire checkout process. I appreciate you telling me about this, I said to Marcus, trying to be polite despite feeling completely bewildered. But I think I need to do my own research before I make any decisions. Marcus nodded, seeming satisfied that he had at least gotten his message across. That is all I ask, he said. Just look into it with an open mind. The truth is out there if you are willing to see it. He walked away, leaving me alone with Sarah and my racing thoughts. I paid for my purchases quickly, using my credit card because my hands were shaking slightly and I did not trust myself to count out the correct amount of cash. Sarah gave me a sympathetic smile as she handed me my receipt. I am sorry about that, she said quietly. Marcus means well, but he can be a bit intense sometimes. He has some very strong beliefs about certain things. Has he done this before? I asked, genuinely curious. Sarah glanced around to make sure Marcus was not within earshot, then leaned in closer. He has mentioned seeing those little characters on people's bags before, but this is the first time I have seen him actually approach a customer about it. I think he has been watching too many conspiracy videos online. I thanked Sarah for her understanding and gathered my bags. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel Rosie bouncing gently against my bag with each step. The sensation that had always been comforting now felt strange and unfamiliar. Marcus's words kept echoing in my mind, making me question everything I thought I knew about my little companion. The drive home was completely different from the peaceful journey to the mall. My mind was racing with thoughts and questions. I kept glancing at my bag in the passenger seat, where Rosie sat innocently, completely unaware of the controversy surrounding her existence. The autumn scenery that had seemed so beautiful on the way to the mall now felt somehow ominous, as if the changing leaves were a sign of something darker approaching. When I got home, I immediately went to my computer and started researching. I typed labubu demon into the search engine and was surprised by the number of results that came up. There were blog posts, forum discussions, and even some videos claiming to expose the dark truth behind these popular characters. As I read through various articles and watched several videos, I began to understand what Marcus had been talking about. Some people believed that the labubu design was based on ancient demonic imagery, pointing to the pointed ears, the unusual proportions, and certain symbols that appeared in some versions of the character. Others shared stories similar to what Marcus had described, unexplained events that began after they brought a labubu into their homes. But as I dug deeper, I also found plenty of counter-arguments. Many of the claims seemed to be based on speculation rather than facts. The original creator of labubu had given interviews explaining that the character was simply meant to be a cute, imaginary creature inspired by various elements of pop culture and fantasy. There was no documented evidence of any intentional demonic symbolism or supernatural powers. I also found discussions from people who had owned labubu characters for years without experiencing any problems whatsoever. They described their collections with joy and affection, sharing photos of their characters in various outfits and poses. These people seemed just as passionate about defending their beloved characters as others were about warning against them. I have seen discourse on TikTok about labubu being demonic, but never thought people took that serious enough to approach strangers. The more I researched, the more I realized that this was indeed a real phenomenon. There were people who genuinely believed these toys were dangerous, and some of them felt strongly enough about it to confront strangers in public. I spent the entire evening reading different perspectives and trying to form my own opinion. I looked at Rosie, who was now sitting on my desk next to my computer, and tried to imagine her as something evil or threatening. It seemed impossible. She looked exactly the same as she always had, sweet, innocent, and completely harmless. I thought about my own experiences with Rosie over the past few months. Had I had any nightmares? No more than usual. Had I experienced any unexplained phenomena? Nothing that I could think of. Had my luck changed for the worse? If anything, I had been having a particularly good few months with success at work and several positive developments in my personal life. I also remembered all the positive reactions Rosie had gotten throughout the day. The little girl who had petted her fur with such delight, the smiles from other shoppers, the general sense of joy and whimsy that she seemed to bring to people, none of that felt evil or demonic to me. As the evening wore on, I began to feel more confident in my own judgment. While I respected Marcus's right to his beliefs and appreciated that he had been trying to help me, I decided that I disagreed with his assessment of labubu. I had done my research, considered multiple perspectives, and come to my own conclusion based on my personal experience and critical thinking. I picked up Rosie and held her in my hands, feeling her familiar softness and weight. "I do not think you are evil," I said to her, feeling a little silly for talking to a toy but somehow needing to say it out loud. "I think you are exactly what you appear to be, a cute, harmless character that brings joy to people. Just wanted to share because I thought it was weird and was wondering if anyone else has had a similar experience." I realized that this experience, strange as it was, had actually been valuable in some ways. It had forced me to examine my own beliefs and do research on something I had previously taken for granted. It had also shown me how differently people can perceive the same thing and how those perceptions can be influenced by personal beliefs, cultural background, and information sources. I decided to keep Rosie exactly where she had always been, attached to my bag, ready to accompany me on future adventures. But I also made a mental note to be more understanding of people who might have different views about things that seem harmless to me. Marcus had been sincere in his concern, even if I disagreed with his conclusions. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and at peace with my decision. I got ready for the day, grabbed my bag with Rosie still proudly displayed on the front, and headed out into the world. As I walked down the street, I wondered if I would encounter any more people who had strong opinions about my little companion, but I felt ready to handle whatever came my way. The experience had taught me something important about standing up for what I believe in while remaining open to other perspectives. It had also reinforced my appreciation for the simple joy that small things can bring to our lives, even when others might see them differently. As I went about my day, I noticed that Rosie continued to attract positive attention from people we encountered. A barista at my coffee shop complimented her adorable appearance, and an elderly woman at the bus stop, smiled, and waved at her. These interactions reminded me why I had fallen in love with my labubu in the first place, not because of any supernatural powers or hidden meanings, but because of the simple happiness she brought to both me and the people around me. Looking back on the whole experience, I felt grateful for the unexpected encounter with Marcus, even though it had been uncomfortable at the time. It had challenged me to think more deeply about something I cared about, and it had ultimately strengthened my confidence in my own judgment. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes a stranger's warning can lead to a deeper understanding of yourself and what you truly believe.